Hello, comrades and relatives. This is Justine with the Red Nation podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about what happened in Window Rock, Arizona, the Navajo Nation capital, this past Saturday, October 26th, where the Harris-Walz campaign stopped to campaign in the capital. This was the first time a vice president candidate has campaigned in the Navajo Nation, which is something that was historic. However, the news is not reporting what fully happened, and we were on the ground that day. So I'm joined by 3 Diné citizens who were there, and we'll be talking about what happened. But before that, I just want to give a brief shout out to Red Media. This past Indigenous Peoples Day 2024 marks the 5th anniversary of the Red Nation podcast. Our podcast is a collaboration between the Red Nation and Red Media and is produced by Red Media. Red Media exists to fill the need for Indigenous media by and for Indigenous peoples. And on Indigenous Peoples Day, we launched our GoFundMe to gain support for our operational costs. So please consider empowering our work and our media work. We were in Window Rock that day because of supporters like you. So that being said, I'll move on to our guests. If I could get introductions from Janine, Coy, and Kylie.
Hi, thank you for having me. Janine Yazi, Diné and Diné citizen, enrolled member of the Navajo Nation. Very happy to be here. I attended Saturday's events in my own capacity as a Navajo woman and mother, with my children attending with me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kylie. I'm a citizen of the Navajo Nation. I'm also a Red Nation member, and I've been with the Red Nation since 2018.
Yeah, hey everyone, Inishia. Thanks for having me on. I am an organizer in Window Rock, Arizona, and I am a Diné citizen.
Thank you so much, everybody. So I thought we start this episode off by just having a brief roundtable of y'all talking about what had happened. And I'll start first real quick. I was there too. I was there in a media role, and I was live streaming on the Red Nation YouTube channel. And we also published a TikTok video / Instagram reel that actually got a lot of attention, I would say, out of what we consider like normal viewers of, or normal viewership of our videos. That one was a more popular one, a more successful one. I thought that was very telling because we got the video out right away the night of, talking about what had happened, and in the days following, I did notice that we were the only ones who were reporting what had happened. So if we could start with, well, can I get a volunteer for who wants to go first?
I can go first. Yeah, so originally my intention for going was to also contribute to media, simply because like this election cycle, there's been a lot of attention and like discussion about it, debate about it. And so I wanted to go once I heard that Walz was going to be speaking, like in our community. And I had wanted to provide some sort of like analysis or like a report back, because I thought it was just so important to provide like a different perspective other than what we have been hearing like all year just on the news, you know? So I wanted to just provide another perspective. But the more I thought about it, the more that I realized, like, well, actually, like, are we really going to have like this man come to our community without being like challenged or like, yeah. So I just felt like something needed to be said. And like everyone else who has been following, and supporting Palestine, the Sudan, Congo, Guahan, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, like the global South. It just became apparent to me that like, it's important to say something, and it's important to speak out. It's important to show others that these, like, dignitaries or like these elected officials, they are responsible for just like horrendous crimes that are happening around the world. So um, I just thought that it was important to show, or yeah, to show support for Palestine, but also to let, like, Walz know that he can't come to our communities without being challenged. Or like, there's like people out there who don't support this rhetoric of the United States. But yeah, I'll stop there.
Okay, I guess I can go next. The main reason I wanted to be there was basically just to pull out a flag when Waltz was in attendance, because I just wanted to send a visible message that Indigenous youth, this is very cognizant on our minds. And there's a lot of rhetoric that comes out of the DNC that says that, third party voters or young people or people who are making the genocide a single issue voter are just enabling Trump and fascism, when it's like, no, we should be punishing neoliberalism and the continuation of the genocide, not just in Gaza, but in Sudan and across all indigenous nations.
Yeah, from my perspective, I didn't originally want to go. I was so tired. The day before, I did attend the other historic meeting in Gila River where Biden issued an apology on behalf of the United States for the boarding school abuses. And I was there for two reasons. One, to support all of our partners at the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition, but also our Indigenous relatives in DOI who have laid the groundwork to make that apology possible. But also, on behalf of like the boarding school survivors and the people that we're descended from, and our community relatives who know that an apology is not enough. And so at that event, it was filled with so many emotions. There's so much that, just like the spectrum of things there. But there was some Autumn relatives who, from that land, who also made their voices heard in support of Palestine. And I was there, on like a work trip, and I remember just like being so grateful for that, grateful for her voice. And I showed up in the best way that I could to show my solidarity with Palestine, as I always do. I've done this every trip I've taken to the White House. I've done it in every meeting that I've had with the feds and at the state level or tribal government. I think with a genocide going on every day, it's our responsibility to be advocates every day for human rights and for the end of these cycles of violence that are perpetuated by settler colonial states. That's our history. That's our birthright. That's who we are as Indigenous peoples, is keeping that resistance alive. And so I was really tired on Saturday and I really didn't want to go, but it was actually the only opportunity I've had so far to just participate in something as a citizen and as a voter and as a mom. And so I rallied it up because my children knew what was going on. My children are very aware of my work and what I do. They're also very aware of the state of politics in the world. They're very much part of the efforts to boycott businesses that support Israel, because they understand very easily that we have a moral and ethical obligation to not support the killing of children anywhere, and the mass murder and genocide of peoples anywhere. And so I felt it was important as a mom and in that role to be there with my children and to show up in that position of strength, to show up with all of our solidarity gear, but also in the way that it means to be Diné warriors, to just bear witness, really. I wasn't planning on doing anything disruptive, and at the end of the day, I didn't do anything disruptive. because I was there with my children, and I thought it was important for us and our civic duty and responsibility to be there, to be visible, to witness what was being said, and to also visibly show, what our political stance is.
Thank you. Yes, and on the Red Nation side, I'll say that Kylie was the like the powerhouse who like propelled us to mobilize to Window Rock on such short notice. And I felt like there was something it like these things can't just happen without us stepping up and saying something or reporting on it and talking about it. The historic Biden apology, which I didn't agree with, because to me they're empty words, and it's something that should be challenged. And then it was like a dual day event in Indian country from the Democratic Party, and it's so ridiculous because it comes just 11 both events happened within 11 days of election day, and it's like Native people are an afterthought to the Democratic Party and also being used as a political prop for the Democratic Party. So I was also extremely insulted to see that Waltz was making a stop in Window Rock. And so to go there and to see snipers lining the sacred monument on Diné people and seeing Diné citizens removed from this event, and then also just seeing how I guess just Native Democratic Party folks are so I guess just like the foot soldiers of liberalism. It was very disturbing to see how accepted Waltz was, and how people are talking about voting being sacred, and seeing how tribal leaders are walking hand in hand with imperialists. So thank you for bringing me into Navajo Nation to help amplify what we're trying to do here. Can y'all talk about how the actual event went?
Is it me? Okay. Let's see how the event went. I guess, well, see, I'll start from when I arrived. So when I arrived at the Memorial Park where it was held, like Window Rock, there was like a giant, like US flag that was hanging from like 2 cranes. And then everyone was like in a single file line to get into the event. And you had to pass like a security, I guess it would be like a checkpoint, like a security checkpoint to actually get inside. And this was like advertised as a public community event. So anyone was welcome to come. Yeah, so once you get past the security point, then it was just open. And there were tents that were aligning, like kind of enclosing the crowd. And that's when I started noticing all the snipers. And people were pointing them out too. They were just like, hey, check it out. There's snipers like on this building, on that building, in the actual like monument itself, Window Rock. So that was unnerving to see that. And honestly, it just there was like a sort of eerie feeling being inside. And I guess at first I was trying to just get my bearings, and just like whoa, what does this all say about how we view politics, or like our approach to politics, how we I guess like the I don't know how to say it, but like the treatment of the people when like a non-native is invited to speak, So it's I just thought like, oh, like this isn't normal. This isn't normal to direct snipers to point at the people, to the people that you're the people of the homelands you're visiting. um, you know, um, So it was very hot that day as well. There was food, and I want to say they delayed the speeches by an hour. So everyone literally waited all day to hear Walz speak, plus the other speakers. And there was just a lot of conversations in the crowd um, about, like Trump and Harris and, who's Republican, who's Democrat. Um, yeah, so it was very much like that was very much like the focus. And then they had signs that said like "Yeah, man" for Trump. um, yeah, so I think by mid afternoon, everyone was just really tired, and they were, starting to shout for Walz to come on because they were getting impatient, which is totally understandable. And then once Walz came on, I like interrupted his speech. And there were about 4 people who were trying to remove me. But they grabbed like my jacket from the back, and then they grabbed my arms, and they were just like pulling me in different directions. They tried to take, I was holding a Palestinian flag, and they tried to take the flag from me. And then they started like pushing me out. So, and then they started like taking me out, like removing me completely from the crowd. And they didn't say anything until until I was almost like at the exit or where I entered from. And so they were just talking amongst each other about like what to do with me. Like, who do they take me to? Like, like which police officer? Because there was a lot of like police there. There was tribal police. I also saw police from Page, and there were other officers that were geared up, like dressed in almost like a green or like brown um, bulletproof vests, and they had guns, like the whole thing. So then they decided to take me to the tribal police, and then that's where they like took my information, and they escorted me out of the event completely. And when I got out, they also they didn't allow anybody else to come into the event, so they closed it. And so there was other people who were waiting outside that were wanting to get into the event, but they couldn't.
Okay, so when I got there, I experienced pretty much the same thing, but there were some individuals. It looks like they cordoned off a section of it for like sanctioned protests. So there was some individuals with like a Palestinian flag and a blowhorn, spreading the word more towards the council chambers. But then once you started going towards the president's office, you realized the main road was blocked off, and they had set up like a security corridor. So there was lots of security. I imagine they were probably Secret Service. They were metal detectors. And so when you went through security, they patted you down. All metal objects and all the object belongings went into a thing where they looked at it, and they waved you down with the metal detector, pat you down to make sure you don't have any weapons, and then they, on top of all that, they asked for photo identification. So when I arrived to the event, I didn't bring my wallet. I just left it in the ride. So they told me you needed ID, and I said, "Oh, okay, I can go ahead and grab it if that's going to be an issue." And there was this one like smaller lady. She was wearing like a camouflage Waltz Harris hat, and she must have noticed me and my C8 and necklace and all that. And she said, "Oh, they're okay. You can let them through. They're not going to be an issue." And then I said, "Oh, okay, thank you." Thanking her for the courtesy. And so me and my friend I attended the rally with, we met up with Kylie, and we saw Justine at the media place. And eventually we just stood there and talked for quite a while. It was pretty hot. The crowd was a very weird vibe, I must say. Like, I don't know if that's just because of who I am and like the politics I ascribe to, but there was definitely a feeling there that I didn't really like as soon as you got there. Like, just the vibes weren't there. I don't know how better to put it. I think it was just because mainly they were probably anticipating like disruption, but not from like Palestinian disruptors, maybe from like Trump people. So I think that the police response and presence was very off-putting right at the get-go because, like you said, they were all geared up, and there was, I don't know how many sniper teams, but we think about the controversies of how the Trump shootings and the assassination attempts went down and how the Secret Service failed. But when it comes to Native peoples, they had native snipers pointing their rifles at indigenous people, when that same security wasn't afforded to white settlers who actually posed a violent threat, who actually took a shot at the president. None of us were armed, none of us had weapons, none of us had violent intentions, and yet we were brutalized by the police and by the Democratic campaign staffers. So once we kind of coalesced and kind of split apart, the crowd started moving forward because they moved the barricades a little closer once the event kind of started kicking off. So everybody's kind of not like rushed it, but people moved up pretty fast. And so when that happened, I noticed a few people were like kind of really close to me. And I was just like, okay, I kind of already knew that they were probably like monitoring us, since we were pretty obvious in greeting each other. And so we were just standing there for a while. And then an individual approached Janine. Janine was standing probably 2 people in front of me. And from what I could hear, I couldn't really hear that well, but they told her that, oh, we've identified you as a disruptor and you need to leave. And she said, what? Like, that makes no sense. I'm here with my children to watch the campaign rally. There's Diné elders. Joe Shirley, just gave a speech. This is what we're here for. This is Diné politics in action. This is Diné democracy in action. Why are you hassling us? And so they left, and then they came and they tried to get her to leave, and Janine stood her ground. And so then they turned on me because I had a Palestinian flag in my pocket. And then they said, oh, you need to go. You need to leave. You are formally disinvited from this event, is what one of the Waltz staffers came up to me and said. And I said, disinvited? There was no invitations that went out to this event. This is a public campaign rally on the Navajo Nation Capitol grounds. I am a Navajo Nation citizen. I don't understand why I can't be here. And so it went back and forth like that. And then they got a Navajo, I assume she was a cop, or it could have been like security. And then she was like, you need to go or you'll be arrested. So they said, okay, I'm not going to try and I don't want to get arrested. So I started to I don't like using the words like comply or like cooperate, giving into their terminology, but that's essentially what I did. I didn't fight them. I didn't disrupt anything. I calmly left the event. And then it hit me that, oh, okay, I'm not going to be able to see anything. They're going to take me out. So I started expressing some sentiments for Free Palestine, and I had the flag in my hand. And then I kind of, took it out a little bit more prominently. And then that's when the cops really got aggressive, and they started really holding on to my wrists. And one put his hand on my bow guard I was wearing, and I said, can you please not touch my bow guard? I'm not going to run from you. I'm not going to lunge at anybody. Like, I don't understand why all of this force has been used against somebody who's not a threat. They dragged me out of the event, past all of the crowd members who were all taking videos of me being escorted out. And they took me past some of the office buildings east of the council chambers. And we sort of came to a stop, and things kind of calmed down. And I asked them, what was that about? And they said, well, you can't be here. And I said, that doesn't make sense. Why can't I be here? I'm a Navajo Nation citizen. This is a public campaign event. Why are you using physical force on me? And so I went back and forth, and I kind of got an eerie feeling because they wouldn't give me an answer as to what I did wrong. So I proceeded to pull my phone out and started recording, and I asked them, what crime have I committed? Because they were getting really adamant about getting my information. I said, my name is Coy. I'm a Diné citizen. I don't feel comfortable giving you any of my personal information unless, you're telling me I'm being accused of a crime. Am I being detained? If not, am I free to leave? And, he said, okay, you want to do that then? Hands behind your back. And then one tried to wrestle my phone out of my hands. 2 or 3 of them put their hands on all my limbs, and they threw me to the ground. Luckily, at that point, like how you said earlier, they weren't allowing people in. So there were some people kind of gathered around there sort of watching the situation unfold. And luckily, some individuals were able to get video footage of me being pinned to the ground by 3 different Navajo Nation cops. One had his knee on my head, one had his knee on my back, and another one had both his knees on my lower back and my my lower legs. 5 of them were surrounding them, just watching it happen, not saying, this is very unreasonable. And they asked me, are you gonna stop fighting? Are you gonna comply? And I said, I haven't not been uncooperative once. You guys escorted me out. I'm here. I asked you guys what's the crime, and you guys tackled me. And they allowed me to sit up, and then they proceeded to start arresting me. They cuffed me. They shackled my legs. They put me in these really tight cuffs. They're not like regular handcuffs. They're like ones that completely keep your wrists behind your back, and they threw me in the back of the cop car. I was in the back of the cop car for maybe like 5 minutes. It got really hot and stuffy, and it's just a very agitating experience, especially when you've done nothing wrong. And they said, okay, you're gonna spend overnight in jail. We're gonna book you. They put me in the back of a cop car, drove me to the Window Rock. It's like a trailer thing where they process bookings. Right when I got there, the corrections officer was like, you're gonna be okay with me, Coy? Can I take these shackles off? You're not gonna fight me? And I said, no, I'm cool. Nothing's gonna happen to you. I'm chill. He's like, oh, they told me you're a fighter. And I was like, where did that come from? I had not fought with them, but and so he was just like, oh, okay, that's just what they told me. Yeah, I told them not to put their hands on you like that, because it's a First Amendment area, but they're just gonna do whatever they want. So that's how it goes, or whatever. He said something to that effect. Like, I told them not to rough you up, but they still did it anyways. And so he processed me. I was in the paddy wagon. It's very uncomfortable. They drove me to Crown Point. They told me I was going to have to stay for 18-hour detention, and I got to a holding cell. It's just a concrete, how do I say it? It's not even a chair. It's just a concrete slab that everybody just sort of makes a bed on or leans on, and it encompasses the circumference of the wall. And there's one silver toilet in the middle of the room with like no privacy. So guards can see you doing your business as they go walking in and out. A very humiliating experience, I gotta say. But it was also very eye-opening at the same time, because when I got there, I imagined like, oh, okay, there's probably going to be some people here for public intoxication. There's probably going to be some individuals here who are, in for doing some not very good things. But in talking to everybody that was there, it was just literally Chays and uncles that were thrown in for public intoxication. And it was just a massive drunk tank. There was not like one criminal in there that I could find. Or so-called criminal besides myself. I was released early, I believe, because people were calling, putting pressure on certain channels. So I was released very early, maybe like 3 o'clock in the morning. They transported me to Window Rock again. Then I got out, yeah.
It's so infuriating to hear all that. I'm so sorry, Coy. Yeah, I arrived around 1:30, thinking that I was too late for anything, because the event the day before was very good about being on time and being prompt, because it gets hot and people can't be out and about in the heat. And there they actually had chairs for people, which they didn't have at this event. So I noticed, well, when I walked in, the first thing I saw was the flag. And I said out loud to my children, like, that should be a Navajo Nation flag, not a US flag. And then I could tell someone heard me, and he started to follow me, but I didn't pay him no mind. I just saw him out of the corner of my eye. And I was walking towards security. There was no line. It didn't look like anything big. I did see the metal detector, but it just looked very casual. And then this guy who doesn't identify himself and is in plain clothes is like, you can't take those in, ma'am, or you can't take those signs in. And in my hand, I had a keffiyeh, a landback flag, and a poster. And all of it was folded up, so you couldn't really see what it was, but you could see the keffiyeh. And as he's saying this, I see people walking in and out with a whole armful of signs. And I was like, that's not true. So I keep walking. And he's just like, no, they're not allowed. And I was like, look at all these people with these signs. I was like, no, I'm going to participate how I participate. Thank you very much. And I'm assuming, like, I don't know who this guy is. He didn't identify himself. If there is like some sort of rule, they'll stop me at security. And like, I'm already thinking in my head, okay, like, I guess I'll have Solaris like run things back or whatever, you know, but I'm also going to like, this is us in our democracy. This is us practicing our democracy. Like, I'm not just going to be like, oh, okay, no. Like I said, I was showing up there as a Diné citizen with my children. It was important for me to show them the practice of democracy and what that means. And so I go through security. I give security all my stuff. No one asks me for any ID. They don't ask me for anything. They just check my bag. They check my stuff. They give it to me. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then I just walk in. I'm like, obviously there's no rules around, you know, bringing stuff in. And I remember talking to my kids as we're walking in. I'm like, you see, never let someone tell you what you can and cannot do. Like, always make sure you are exercising your rights, and that you get verification about what's allowed and what's not. And so we keep walking, and we go in, and I'm seeing people, and I'm just like smiling, saying hi. I ran into you guys. I haven't seen you guys in like forever. Like, I don't even remember the last time I saw you guys. And so it was like that for most things, because I travel a lot, I work a lot, and like, I don't get to be in community spaces a lot unless it's for meetings, you know? So I was just kind of like very casual and just very like, you know, trying to catch the vibe or see what's going on. And you're totally right, Koi. Like, the vibe was off from the beginning. What I noticed right away was that even though I knew like a lot of people, and I definitely knew all the politicians, and I knew like all of the quote unquote like notable like speakers, there wasn't that many people in the crowd that I knew. There were a few. There was like, you know, a good handful, but there was a lot of people that I didn't know and that didn't look like they were from the Navajo Nation. And so like, I clocked that really quickly, because I've been working here for the past 15 years, like in Window Rock. Like, I know that crowd, and it wasn't that crowd. It was different. There was absolutely not 800 people there. Like, it seemed like it wasn't that well attended. And so I was just like, oh, we aren't late. And I was told by several people that were telling me, asking me if I was coming over, that Walz was supposed to come speak at 2 p.m. And so I was like, well, there's not that many people here. I'm with my children. My daughter's kind of short. Like, let me just go work our way up to the front to go, you know, be close. We stood there for like a good 30 minutes, I think, 30, 40 minutes, maybe even an hour, with nothing really happening, until someone suddenly like taps me on my shoulder and is like, ma'am, can we see your arrival instructions and your RSVP? And I was like, what? He's like, I need to see your arrival instructions. Like, I was like, no, there's no arrival instructions here. Like, this is an open community event. And then he proceeds to like identify himself as like Secret Service, and like, this is a private event, and if I don't have like an RSVP and arrival instructions, then I have to be escorted out. And I was like, no, that's not the case at all. I was like, this is advertised on the Navajo Nation president's social media as an open community event. This is our chance as Diné citizens to hear from this campaign, see what they're promising us, because they're trying to win our vote. I was like, so I'm just going to participate as a Diné citizen. Thank you very much. I was like, you're not going to be telling me I can't be here. And I could tell they got frustrated. But I mean, they had nothing to say to that. Like, I was ready to pull up the social media posts. I was ready to like even call Buu, you know, like, be like, why are people harassing me? Like, why are these non-natives harassing me? But yeah, it just felt so ridiculous and so like idiotic that I didn't even bother to record it. I didn't even bother to like pay it no mind. Once they left, I kind of just like kept watching the speeches. And then I heard them behind me talking to someone else, being like, we need to see your arrival instructions. Are you registered, or you have to leave? And I turn around and I don't recognize right away that it's Koi, because Koi has like a mask and whatnot. And like, I don't really know Koi's face. But like, I'm like, no, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this again? Like, I just went through this with you guys. Like, leave him alone. This is an open community event. Why are you harassing people, you know? And so I kind of get into it with them, but they're like two people behind me. So I hear them talking to Koi, and I can't hear like everything that's exchanged. But I do hear when one of the officers is like, we're going to arrest you if you don't leave with us, or something like that. And I was like, excuse me for what? On what grounds? Like, what are you threatening people with arrest for? And that really pissed me off. You know, like, I'm a human rights advocate. I'm an indigenous rights advocate. I know how to defend my civil rights. And like I was just focused on like helping like our fellow Diné not be harassed by these people on a power trip, apparently. So anyway, like I hear him just be like, oh, no, like we just need to ask questions or something. Like we're just going to like talk to you back here, or some crap like that. And like, I'm just like, no, like come stand with me. Like, come up here. This is ridiculous. Like, no, like, because I want to hear more and I want to make sure like Koi's safe. And I'm like, I'm not going to like, let them take this person. But then that's when, you know, they say something else to Koi, and then like I grab Koi's hand and they start like kind of pulling him, and then the people the who I thought were Secret Service, but they end up being like freaking Walz staffers, that are closest to me are like, oh, take her too, and I'm like, you guys, like, be quiet. Who are you even? You know, like. But then the officers start to say, like, if you don't let go, we're going to have to escort you out too. And I was just like, I was thinking in my head that they were just going to escort him back there and ask some questions. And I was like, Koi, I didn't say Koi. I was like, I'm sorry, I got to stay with my children. And so we let go. And then like at that time, like David Sosi comes up and starts doing like the welcoming speech and like, a prayer, and I just start hyper focusing on like that because I know David Sosi is one of my elders, and I know he has powerful prayers, and I'm just trying to like, you know, just wipe off all of like, you know, like that energy, but I also feel like their eyes on me, and I noticed that those like who I still thought were like Secret Service, and because they didn't identify themselves any other way, they're like all around me, and I'm just like trying to like center myself because I'm there as a citizen. I'm there as a mom. I'm there trying to like just hope for the best. I say a prayer for Koi. I say a prayer for like our people and for like what we're standing there for. And then some speeches happen, and then more time passes, and then I get tapped on the shoulder again. And this time I'm like surrounded by a mixture of staffers, Secret Service, Navajo Nation PD, and they try to make the same argument again. And I'm like, I'm just like, at this point, I'm fed up, but I'm like holding my ground. And they're like, do you have a arrival instructions? Like, you've been identified as a disruptor. And I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? And they're like, we have reason to believe you're disrupting. I was like, you can tell the future now? I was like, is that part of your job skills? Like, and I'm being sassy, right? But I'm also like just incredulous. Like, what the hell are you guys doing? Like, why are you wasting time? Why are you guys causing all this disruption, you know? And they're like, you have to come with us. And I turned to the Navajo Nation police, and I'm like, these guys keep harassing me. Like, these individuals here, individual here, I don't know who they are. They have not identified themselves to me. And I was like, you're here to uphold Navajo Nation law and to protect Navajo Nation people. Why are you taking direction from these people? And then he's like, oh, they said you're a disruptor or something like that. So I was like, did they show you any evidence of this? Like, what are you even using against me right now? Because I'm just standing here listening to these speeches of these politicians. And then he the police officer kind of like stops, and he like asks to go speak to one of the campaigners or whatever, the staffers. And then they continue to tell me that I have to go with them. And I was like, I am not leaving with any of you. Like, I don't feel safe with any of you. You have consistently harassed me ever since I got here. I'm attending this with my children. I will not be separated from them. I will not be separated from the crowd and go anywhere with you. I was like, you have not given me any justification for why you keep harassing me in this way, and why I need to remove myself from this event. And so like they start to like make up all these excuses, like just like in real time. And I'm just debunking everything. And then they're just reaching. They're trying to convince me to just like leave with them, and to like that I'm a problem, like to just capitulate to like them saying that I'm a problem. Even to the point where one of the staffers, the same one that you said you saw, Koi, a young, like short woman with like a camouflage hat that said Waltz in like orange lettering. who was just like this like Weasley little like agitator. Like she was an agitator. Was like, oh, she has to go. Like, oh yeah, she is causing problems. And I'm like, what the hell? Like I was literally just standing there the entire time. Like talking to my children too, like explaining them who was coming up, talking to people around me, like, and then she's like, and they have to go too. And she reaches to put her hands on my children. And I'm like, no. I was like, no, you don't touch my children. I don't know who the hell you are. And I was like, you need to leave me alone. And then she's like, well, unaccompanied minors can't be here. And I'm just like, they're just finding every reason to try to like get me and my children out of there. And I hold my ground. They end up not being able to do it. The police officers come, like after he talks to one of the main like guy that I thought was the Secret Service, but is actually just a staffer. The police officer comes back and is like, okay, we're really sorry. We are the ones that are causing the disruption right now. We won't remove you unless you become disruptive. And I'm like, what does that even mean? You guys have accused me of this at least 5 times. What does that even mean? And they're like, you can't be yelling. And it was ironic because at that time, like someone said something and like the crowd like yelled. And I was like, okay, so I can't be the only one that yells. Like I'm the only one here that can't yell. And then they're like, no, like you can't be yelling and trying to interrupt the speeches. And I was like, all right, well, I never planned on doing that. So thank you. Like, I'm going to go back to participating. Right. Anyway, so they all leave and then I like continue on participating, but I don't feel safe anymore. Like, and it gets me so mad because like, I'm an organizer. I know how to disrupt. Like, I know how to plan an action. Like that was not what I was there for. I was there as a Diné woman. I was repeatedly harassed in front of my children. My children were also threatened with being ejected. And I'm just like, this is unbelievable that this is happening in my own homelands. I've been to the DNC. I've been to Washington. I wore Palestinian solidarity clothes in all of those places. I've taken in signs. I've taken in and worn my sash belt that says Free Palestine. I've displayed that in all of these very hostile environments. Never once was I treated the way that I was treated in my own homelands by staffers, you know? And so like, when I'm keeping to my word, I'm not going to disrupt any speeches. I'm not there to disrupt speeches. I'm there with my children. I'm not going to be yelling. But I am going to show my solidarity for Palestine. And so when Walz finally comes up, you know, he speaks, I hear something like happening on the side of me and I see like the police officers like sort of converge. And I noticed like they're trying to take someone out. And I'm just like, this is insane. And I'm like, I don't even want to be here any longer. Like, I'm going to like leave halfway, like through this speech. Like I'm trying to listen to what he's saying. Like he says, I forgot at what point he says something. Everyone lifted their signs up. So I'm like, you know, I'm just going to do this and then leave. So like I lift up my sash belt that says Free Palestine. You can't see that it says Free Palestine in the back. Like that's how undisruptive my behavior was. Like it only says Free Palestine in the front. And as I hold it up, like some guy out of nowhere comes from like to the side of me and to, like a little behind me and just yanks my sash belt. And I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, whoa, who the hell are you? And like, it twists my wrist, but I'm still holding on to it. And this guy's like tugging on it, like trying to take it out of my hands. And I'm like, this is my sash belt, you know, like that's important to Diné woman. And like, I had that specially made for me, like to symbolize like so many different things. So I'm holding on to that thing. There's no way I'm letting that thing go. And he's tugging at it. And then one of the guys that was like part of like the group that kept harassing me from the time that I was there comes up and he's like, all right, you have to leave. You're attacking our staffer. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So like, they don't say I disrupt, right? They say I'm attacking their staffer. Meanwhile, this guy is like still trying to take my cultural property out of my hands. And like some people were like trying to stop him, but then most of the people are like start jeering and like, boo, get her out of here. And I'm just trying to hold on to my sash belt. And so like the staffers that were trying to remove me from the beginning surround me. They start pushing me from behind. This guy's pulling me from the front. And I'm like, you need to let this go. Who the hell are you? Like, identify yourself, because I don't know who this person is. He could be a Trumper. He could be a white supremacist. I don't fucking know. And like, and instead, like the Secret Service guy who ends up just being like a staffer, like hands me off to 2 Navajo Nation police officers. Well, they pull me out, and then 2 Navajo Nation police officers come up, and I immediately turn around because I just got separated from my child, and I have no idea what she witnessed. I have no idea, like, if she's scared, and like, you know, like if she's trying to follow me. So I turn around and I start trying to look for her, and I start to look back, and that's when the Navajo police officers grab me. And I was like, no, I need to go find my daughter. I need to make sure that she's safe. This man attacked me. You need to be grabbing him. I have no idea who this man is. And they don't do anything. They grab me and they turn me around, and they start dragging me out. One of the officers tries to twist my arm behind my back to put me into an arrest hold, and then like he like strained my shoulder. And I was like, am I under arrest? And they say no. So I was like, you have absolutely no right to be putting me into arrest hold right now. I was like, this is excessive force, and I will file a complaint against you. And then he immediately let my arm go, like let me put it back forward, but they're still holding on to me. And I'm like, I need to see my child. Like, I need to make sure my child is safe. Like, I will leave. Like, you can take me back to my child, and I will get her, and we will happily leave this place. I was like, I cannot believe you are handling this like this. And they refuse. They refuse to let me go back to my child. And so they grab me again, and like they're just mad. They're mad that I'm like I'm being, I guess, I don't know, like argumentative because I'm trying to go get my child. And they're like, no, you were given a chance. I'm like, given what chance? They're like, you were told if you were disruptive, you would be taken out. I was like, I was told if I yelled to interrupt these speeches, I'd be taken out. No one can say that I did that. I was not being disruptive. A man attacked me because I held my sash belt up. And they're like, well, what does it say? I was like, that's besides the point, because that wasn't in your definition of what being disruptive was. And I was like, and if that was what you guys were policing for, you need to be more clear about it. And they're like, well, you got to go now. And they're dragging me out. And I'm pushing back because I'm just like, if my daughter is coming behind me, like, I'm like trying to give her time to like catch up to me. Or at least like anyone that's with her. And, but I'm trying to like remain calm, and I just keep asking the cops, am I being detained? Am I being arrested? And they keep saying no. And I keep telling them, well, then you have no right to be holding me like this. You have no right to be restraining me. But they hold on me, they drag me out. And then they try to take me to this area where there's like paddy wagons and shit. And I'm like, I was like, no, I do not consent to be going over there. I do not consent to be taken out of eyesight of the crowd. I'm still thinking about my daughter. And then that's when they give me to a police officer who seems to be in charge. And I immediately start telling them, like, what is this about? I'm like, why are you guys doing this? Like, people have been harassing me since I got here. I'm a Diné citizen. I did not break any laws. I did not break any Navajo Nation laws. There's no reason. I was not being disruptive. I was not being violent. There's no reason for you to be treating me this way. And he says, oh, well, these guys have a permit. And he's talking about like the organizers. And I'm just like, that doesn't even make any sense. Like, so the permit trumps Navajo Nation laws. So the permit deputizes these non-Navajos to like make decisions on this community event over who's allowed to be there and who's not, who's considered a disruptor or who's not. Because none of the Trump people were ejected. None of the people jeering or interrupting some of the politicians' speeches were ejected. It was literally only people who were showing solidarity with Palestine. And I know that was one of the reasons why they kept targeting me, is because of the way I was dressed. And like, and so I'm in it, I'm engaged in it. He has no answers for me, like nothing that is right, nothing that is lawful for why I was treated that way. And like he keeps telling me the police officers are going to go get my daughter. And I'm like, no, I do not consent to that. You're going to terrify my little girl. You can escort me there and back. That's all you have to do. Like, I don't see why that is so hard or why that's so threatening at this community event. If you really don't want me there, then still allow me my parental right to go get my minor daughter and take her out of there safely. Instead, he tells me, no, that man's going to go get her. He knows you. He knows your family. He's going to make sure she's safe. I'm like, who the hell is he talking about? And he points to this guy that ends up being the guy that originally assaulted me, that originally grabbed my sash belt from me. And then I lost my shit because I'm here as a mother asking this police officer to take me back to get my daughter. And instead he's telling me that the man that originally attacked me is going to be the one that does it. And I cannot, like, that was when I completely lost my cool and I was angry. And then he threatened me with arrest then. And luckily I had a friend nearby me and she was like, what are you trying to arrest her for? And I was like, what the hell are you trying to arrest me for? And he's like, disorderly conduct. I was like, disorderly conduct? You're telling me that there's a crime happening right now. You're facilitating a kidnapping. I do not give you consent to let this stranger that just attacked me to go get my daughter. And he's just like, he doesn't know what to do. And I'm just like, do these guys even know how to uphold Navajo Nation law? Did they even know like what their oath of office is? And I'm just livid. And the only thing that calms me down is that like someone else that knows me comes up and is like, Janine, thank God, like other people knew me there. Otherwise, like this would all happen in a vacuum. This wasn't captured by anything. Like you guys caught some footage, like other people caught footage on their cell phones because they knew me, but I didn't see any of these guys like while this was all happening. But someone else came up to me and was like, I got in touch with, and she still has, like she said that some people tried to come and get her. And she still has your daughter. She's not going to let anyone take her. And that's when I could finally breathe. And, I was just like, just have them keep her because I don't want any of these people near her. And I'm like, just have her keep her until the end of the event. Meet me out here, when everything, like away from these people. And so after that, you know, like it took us a while as a family to process and to just kind of settle our energy. I had to immediately go to like ceremonial space because that was such ugly energy from like the other Diné people that were around there. I heard about what happened with Koi and that made me even more mad. I heard what happened to Kylie. To know, like, I knew the other people that were escorted out was just infuriating, that I knew other people that were being harassed and questioned in different ways as they were trying to go in. Like, it just all made me so mad that so many Diné citizens were being treated unfairly and violently at an event on our homelands that was meant to, like, buy our vote to save democracy. Like, how dare they? How dare they facilitate in this conspiracy to violate our civil rights and our rights as Diné people at a public event that was meant to like buy our votes, that was meant to like convince us this was the best ticket to lead the United States because they uphold tribal sovereignty, because they understand the rights of indigenous peoples, and they just like in real time let their staffers facilitate violation after violation of it in our homelands, and separated me from my child the day after Biden gives this apology for like the boarding school abuses that did the same to indigenous families. Like, it was egregious. I had to go to the hospital the next day after I rested. I got treated for like a badly sprained wrist and a sprained shoulder that still freaking hurts. So like both my arms are freaking injured and I'm having to do all this work on the computer and like take care of my kids and like do all of the things. And so like it's every day. It's been a reminder of how violently we were treated unjustly. And so that was my experience at that freaking campaign event.
Oh my gosh, Janine, that was rough to listen to in such detail. I am so sorry that happened to you and your daughter, and to Kylie and Koi also. I'm just really I'm just shaken up by this. I was in the media area the entire time, so I was keeping an eye out because I knew you guys were being targeted. And Janine, I saw you being targeted very obviously from the get-go, from even before the prayer, I think, what even happened. And I saw all these people surrounding you. I was taking my videos and stuff. But I was unable to see the details of how they were handling you physically. I had no idea about a lot of that actually. And I'm just so sorry. It is like you said, egregious. That is just so sickening. And that actually leads us to our talking points that we wanted to talk about, because this is just such clear like violations of tribal sovereignty. This is clear use of like deputizing the Navajo Nation police for the settler state. And there's just like contradiction after contradiction about just the Democratic Party being there, period. And listening to all of your stories, it becomes so much more clear to me about like how the Democratic Party was using um Diné citizens in Window Rock as a literal prop, like literally dehumanizing all of you to set up a stage to say, hey, and then the Biden apology combination to go to indigenous reservations to say, hey, like we're hand in hand with indigenous people, JK, not really. And it is so infuriating and so sickening to just so if y'all could offer some words of sense about what all of this means.
I think it just goes to show how much of the dire strait indigenous sovereignty is, not just here but across the world. Just native sovereignty all over is just under this incredible attack like we haven't seen since maybe the 70s. You know, was it yesterday or 2 days ago that Evo Morales was targeted? You know, his vehicle was shot at with gunfire. That's just an even evident more reminder that, you know, it's things are getting to a boiling point to where it's like, what does it mean to be a sovereign nation, and what does it mean to exercise sovereign authority if Buu Nygren is inviting settler parties to come brutalize native peoples all, what is it, 9 days for the election, and that's not being reported in mass media? I was watching CNN last night with my grandma, and they were covering a Kamala Harris event, and they mentioned in passing that a few demonstrators were ejected from the crowd, and you know that's an all the common occurrence at DNC events nowadays. They gave it maybe 8 seconds. So to me, that just goes to show they want to dismiss indigenous sovereignty while using, how you said, native people as tokens, as props to say, we are diverse, we care about minority issues, we care about the working class, we care about those most, how do I say, those most dehumanized by capitalism. But yet, it just flies in the face of all of that. The Navajo Nation police showed themselves to be a colonial police force. You know, they weren't taking orders from themselves, they were taking orders from white staffers.
Yeah, I after this experience and after hearing about Coy and Janine's experiences, like yeah, it's honestly has like shaken me up as well, and like they're so horrifying. Like I did not think that this was going to happen, you know, or that we would be met with such violence. And it honestly has also like given me a lot to think about in terms of like you know, what does this say about like our tribal sovereignty, like this situation, you know, and this experience, and how does it change our understanding of tribal sovereignty, honestly? Because I think okay, I looked up like a definition for tribal sovereignty on the NCAI, National Congress of American Indians webpage. And so it describes tribal sovereignty as, and I'm just going to read it, like this little paragraph. But it says, the essence of tribal sovereignty is the ability to govern and to protect and enhance the health, safety, and welfare of tribal citizens within tribal territory. Tribal governments maintain the power to determine their own governance structures and enforce laws through police departments and tribal courts. The governments exercise these inherent rights through the development of their distinct forms of government, determining citizenship, establishing civil and criminal laws for their nations, taxing, licensing, regulating, and maintaining and exercising the power to exclude wrongdoers from tribal lands. So with that definition, to me, what that says, like in this experience and how Walz and his staffers were treating Indigenous people in their own homelands, they had no jurisdiction to do that. It was actually within the power of tribal government to, like the way I'm interpreting it is like the power of tribal government, meaning President like Buu Nygren, to like exercise their right to interject and put a stop to how they were treating Khoi and Janine. You know what I mean? And so it's just like baffling to me that they allowed it to happen. They were there. I'm sure they saw what was happening. I'm sure, you know, before the event, they were planning on how it was going to unfold or like what they were going to look for. So it's like, why didn't they step up and like actually prioritize the safety, health, and well-being of Native people, their own people? But instead, what they did was prioritize like non-Native people, their health, their well-being, their safety. And it's just so I don't even have a word for it. Like it makes me so angry that in this instance, our rights, our power, our like tribal sovereignty was put on the back burner. It was an afterthought. It was a complete afterthought. And instead, it seemed to me that our health, our safety, our well-being was not important. You know? And I mean, it doesn't feel good to say that because I live in the border towns. I don't want to live in the border towns, but there's no guarantee that I'm going to have housing if I decide to move back to my own homelands, you know? And so when I visit or when I have a chance to go back, for me, it's like what I associate with a place that like I am welcomed, you know, and I can be around relatives. I can trust people that are there. Whereas in the border towns, I don't have that. I guess it would be that level of safety or that guarantee that I'm going to be welcomed. In the border towns, it is an experience of discrimination, of harassment. People know that you're Native when you're walking around the border towns. It feels like you're being watched, you know, you're being surveilled. It's very like blatant. They make it known that you don't belong, you know, in the cities, or like it's settler territory. It's a space for settlers to express themselves and like be racist, you know. And so to me, like being at the Walz event and just like processing everything that's happening and processing like Janine and Khoi's experience, it's like this is the same violence that I experience in the border towns. And I think that when people in the crowd, like I heard them saying, you know, like be respectful, don't bring trouble here. But it's like, why is that being directed at us when people like Walz and the police, they're the ones that are bringing the trouble here? You know, like they're the ones that are bringing these like strategies and tactics of like border town surveillance and security onto the res, and it's being embraced by the president. And so why is that being normalized? Or like, why is that something that is supposed to make us believe that we're being kept safe? And then what does it say about like Walz or any future president, vice president, presidential candidate when they come to visit, or not visit, but like speak at our homelands of Native people? Like, what does it say about them when they're bringing all this security? Like, what does that say about how they perceive Native people, you know? And I think it's racist that they wanted to have like snipers and this extra security and people who are dressed like normal civilians, but they're actually like Secret Service or whatever. Like, they're already making it known that they don't trust us, that they see us as violent. They probably, still think of us as like savages, and that we can't govern our own, or we're just going to give up our power, and be these like submissive, like domicile people when they're around. And so to hear Walz being described as someone who is going to be an important ally to Native people or a friend of Native people is bullshit because we did not see that. And it's a lie. And I don't think that we should have to like cozy up to colonizers just to receive like crumbs when we have a power to kick them off. Like, they don't even have to they don't have to be here. Like, and so I think it just like kind of refreshing, like definitions of tribal sovereignty, or even just like my understanding of Navajo Nation government. There's so much power that we have that we don't enforce for the right reason, or not for the right reasons, but we don't enforce when we should. And I think if we did that, it would send such like a powerful message, and it would change like our relationship with the United States government. And I think by doing that, we would be taken more seriously, But yeah, that's all I have for right now.
I agree with the points that have been made. I think we really need to question why that team with so many Native advisors were not properly prepped on how to show up in a respectful way to a tribal nation and create an inclusive, just, and welcoming environment for like Native people. Especially since so much effort has been put into trying to galvanize the Native vote to save democracy, because it has shown power to benefit the Democrats, but they don't get that benefit by default. Like, we have also seen the past couple of election cycles that although they've benefited from that, the Native priorities, Indigenous priorities, policy priorities, and issues are the first things that get put on the chopping block or get deprioritized. How many years have we had a Native American Voting Rights Act that has not made any progress whatsoever? And yet they want to come out every 4 years to talk about how important it is for us to vote for a president. It's almost like I see two things happening at once. Both this lack of will to truly address systemic barriers that prevent our people from protecting and exercising our sovereignty using every tool available to us, and this like need to put on this farce that Indigenous peoples legitimize and buy into the system as it is. Like, we legitimize this myth that American democracy is inherently good, are the best model that we have. But as Indigenous peoples, we know that that's never been true. And I'm sitting with a lot around this, because I definitely absolutely demand an end to the genocide, to demand an end to continuing to support the arming of Israel and the financing of Israel. I demand an end to all neoliberal politics and policies that are leading to mass removal, displacement, genocide in many different parts of the world, and to the same policies that are continuing to threaten the lands, territories, and resources of Indigenous peoples here domestically. Even under the so-called, like, all of these like goody, like, feel good sort of initiatives, like the IRA, for example. That's one of the big platforms, right? They keep talking about how they're going to build off the IRA. Like, the IRA is also leading to revitalizing nuclear energy and uranium development. That's going to directly target our peoples, and that's still part of a democratic agenda. So it was like weird. It's weird being in those spaces and seeing, like, I think, like, recognizing that Native liberals are a big threat to our movement and to our organizers. They're enabling this machine. They're not changing it. They're not helping it progress very much. Instead, they're replicating a lot of the practices that put our peoples in harm's way. And I feel like, as an organizer, and like when I'm in my professional capacity, whether it's working at the state level, the federal level, or the international level through UN mechanisms, I feel strong and protected. I showed up to this event as a Diné citizen, and I've never felt more unprotected. I never felt more unsafe. And I think that shows that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and that it doesn't matter who wins this election. Like, it's an uphill battle for us to continue to exercise our sovereignty. And we absolutely need our own Indigenous peoples and our Indigenous leaders to be more courageous in exercising that. The Indigenous leaders I saw paraded on that stage were not people who spoke strongly about our sovereignty. They spoke strongly about the Democratic Party, but they didn't speak to any of the systemic issues that our people are still dealing with. They didn't even speak to any of the systemic solutions that our people are still dealing with, because it's not going to be solved just because the office is, like, still in the Democrats' hands. I mean, like, we've seen that already. We've seen that threats still get carried out against our peoples. Obama was president when Standing Rock happened. You know, like we have native leaderships when Oak Flats was given away to another corporation, when the Alaska Wildlife Refuge continues to be threatened, when Indigenous lands and territories are threatened because we want to increase lithium mining and mining for critical minerals and so-called transitional minerals. Like, it's our peoples, our lands that continue to be put into these sacrifice zones. And so, like, we need people to wake up, because at the end of the day, it's also our peoples who are still making the solutions possible underneath the system. We are still making regenerative economies and models of regenerative economies. We're still building rich, successful, comprehensive mutual aid networks that are taking care of our own people when every level of government fails them. We are still building robust and sustainable food systems when everyone else is freaking out about how they're going to feed themselves, are recognizing that the food systems that they have is actually filled with poisons and not the life-giving nutrients that they need. We are still the ones that are putting our bodies on the line to fight and protect our water, to protect Mother Earth, to protect all the things that are sacred. And we're doing this under conditions that are still hostile and that make it dangerous for us to be an Indigenous person daring to stand up for the protection of all life and all peoples. And like that's what's the most egregious thing for me, but it's also what's, like, still keeps that fire in me, because as horrible as that experience was, like, I know what was planted in my children and what was planted in all of those who love me, who may not have been there and who wish they could be there, is that fire to keep fighting and to recognize the systems that we're up against and the people that we're up against. And just that responsibility to keep honoring, you know, everything our ancestors had to endure and our people continue to have to endure in order to build the future that we ultimately deserve and that we can make possible.
Thank you, comrades. You know, listening to y'all speak, it just really makes me think about how fragile the ideology of the settler state is. Like, all of this violence that is used to keep it intact. And then it, and then on the other end, it's also making me think about, I guess, like, what happens to tribal sovereignty when we bring that shaky ass ideology and try to mix it up with our own. And Native liberals in power are going to be the end of Native people, period. It's decolonization or extinction, as we say in the Red Nation. And if we're continuing to embrace and to move toward colonial ideology, it's going to be the end of us. We're seeing in real time the undoing of tribal sovereignty when we have so much power as Indigenous people to reclaim our our power, and that's not happening with when we're holding hands with imperialists with who are funding the genocide of other Indigenous peoples. I just read this morning that the US has paid for 70% of military operations in Israel. Like, how? And this is happening under a democratic president. And everything that you just said now, Janine, like, this is the Democratic Party at work, and this is the Democratic Party when they engage with Indigenous peoples. And just to be like, I guess more positive too, is like, this also shows us the power of our ideology as people who are fighting for decolonization. Simply showing up with a sash belt that says Free Palestine invokes that kind of violence, because that is the threat that it poses. And I think that in itself is really powerful. And I think that the brave warriors that stood up at both events, at the Biden apology, there was a sister there who was there with her sign saying that you still have our children in the ground, land back, and she was shouting Free Palestine on the way out. And that inspired so many people. The videos of her were going everywhere because the people know that this is going to be the kind of solidarity and ideology that's going to save us, that we see through the bullshit. Some liberals want crumbs when we want material things like land back, like free Leonard Peltier. Why hasn't this happened if you want the native vote? And I also see a lot of hope in what had happened at this event, because it is a definitive show that Native people exist who don't embrace this ideology that is death driven, that is against our sovereignty, that is all of these things that we've been talking about. And I just hope that our listeners are really take this to heart, really understand that when they choose a liberal ideology, it translates to material violence. When you choose to hold hands with the Democratic Party, this is the material ramifications of that. And I just hope that the ideologies that are going to save us, decolonization, like, period, like that we can go into all of like factions of what that even means and stuff, but just moving toward it and understanding that we have the power to build our political alternatives is I guess I guess like us having the power to build our alternatives as Indigenous peoples is the threat to the settler state. Like, we must understand that. We must understand that the settler colonial ideology is inherently death driven to Indigenous people to survive. It needs violence to survive. That is why we saw the violence at this event. That is why we saw our people being brutalized in this way. And I just hope that when this episode is coming out a day before election day, and I'm not going to tell people who to vote for, what to vote for, but I do hope that you take this all into consideration when casting a vote. But thank you so much, comrades, for going through everything again. And, I'm sorry that you have to really recount. Amazing. I'm sorry that you had to recount these traumatic events, but I also think it's equally important to let the people know that this is something that happened, and that both that dual event that happened with the apology and the campaign stop did not go without interruption. And I think that that's something important for the people to know. And we're coming up at about almost an hour and a half, which is like a perfect time for a podcast episode. So I just wanted to see if y'all had any final thoughts, and take as much time as you like. And if there's anything else that you want to let the folks at home listening know.
I guess I'll go ahead and kick this off. I think you said a lot of things very perfectly. And one of the things that I keep thinking on was that from the moment we got there to the moment we left, there wasn't that many people there. Because I do believe that the majority of our people know what is really going on. And our the only people that you see really cheerleading, these parties, whether it's the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, are people who don't have a well-developed political analysis of like what has got us here as Indigenous peoples, like why we are dealing with the many issues that we're dealing with. And I still hold some grace for our people in those positions, because I know so much has been denied from us, from our true history. So much has been instilled in us through forced assimilation and the generations of boarding schools, and just still the whitewashing of mainstream U.S. curriculum. And it doesn't matter if you manage to be one of the successful ones that go and find your way through these Ivy League institutions, you are still whitewashed and fed these colonial frameworks, values, and lies through every level of these institutions. And so what I've seen most apparent in dealing with individuals that, really, I guess, champion themselves as Democratic darlings or party darlings, because they're also on the Republican side, is that they're not organizers. They're not people who like sit down and have like gone through that struggle of learning in community what people are fighting for, what people are grappling with, what it means to create a shared analysis and a shared vision for what it is that we're fighting for. They're not grounded in that. And that's why they fancy themselves voices of the people. But we're never voices of the people. If you're an organizer, you know that you're a servant of the people. You work for the people, and like our voices are one with the people. And we have to bring that into every space that we're in. And as a Diné woman, that means upholding our values. And our values are very much in line with protecting the human rights, the sacred rights of every form of life, of every person, no matter where they may be, because we know that we are all interconnected. And that's something that many of our Indigenous cultures teach us. And that's why we're able to still build united visions, united frameworks, united movement analyses that help us stand strong against these colonial powers. And so I don't know what people are going to do tomorrow. I know people are grappling with so many different things, but I do know it is possible to make decisions from a principled place, honoring our history of movement building, honoring that the power comes from our people and from our movements and not from these institutions, and honoring that no matter what the outcomes are, we're in it to fight. We're in it to fight for our shared liberation. And we're going to do that using every avenue available to us, every tool available to us. And I know that there's a lot more of us that believe in that than those that don't.
I don't have anything to add. I think that was like beautifully said. So I agree totally with Janine.
So tomorrow, I think no matter who you vote for, it's evident that the settler colonial empire isn't going to go away in a day. And it just shows us that we have so much hope for the future, no matter where in the world we are, that this evil presence that has just been given free rein all across the world that we know as global capitalism is on its last legs, and these are its last dying breaths and scratches, because a new world is going to be born that's not going to be based around greed and native death and the destruction of land and the air. It's going to be based on harmony and restoring all of our connections we have with one another, because there's more that bring us together as human beings that, you know, tear us apart. And the two-party system capitalizes upon tearing people apart because they demonize democracy. We've seen it since 2016 to 2020, now to 2024, that they use the fear of fascism over our heads, that you can't vote for what you actually want because Orange Man's going to come back, you know? And it's like, Orange Man's going to go away one day. And then what? All of these problems are still going to be here. All of these underlying foundations that uphold global neoliberal capitalism are still going to be here. So how do we address all of that? How do we start getting at the root core of the problem? And once we start doing that, I think momentum is going to build that can't be stopped, and the world will be a better place.
Amazing. Thank you so much, comrades. I'm going to end on a Red Media promo. So does anybody else here want to plug any organizations, or is there anything we need to send the people? Any places we got to send them to? Let us know before I end it on the Red Media note.
Let me plug the Venmo for the info shop. So you can send any funds to KE Info Shop at Venmo. Those will go to support any of the fees that I need to deal with. I have 2 criminal charges. One is criminal nuisance and one is disorderly conduct. So I'll have to go to court eventually to hash all that out. But I'm confident that, it'll be okay.
And although I've this is about my experience as a Diné woman. I am a longtime organizer, and I am proudly the director of policy and advocacy for Indian Collective. And I'm so grateful to be part of a movement organization that has a strong political analysis and takes a very principled approach to supporting movement building across Indian country. I feel like if we can increase the amount of individual donors we have to sustain our work, that just makes us even more fierce and capable of moving with the agility that we need to move and supporting Indigenous rights and self-determination. Much love to my organization, Indian Collective.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. If you made it to the end of the show, thank you so much. All of our production work all of our podcast production is taken care of by Red Media. This year, Red Media is on the hustle for some help with our operation costs. We have a GoFundMe out. Please donate to the GoFundMe. We have links in the bio everywhere. And this episode will be released during Native American Heritage Month. So support Red Media, support Get Info Shop, and support Indian Collective and the Red Nation. Thank y'all so much for tuning in, and we'll see y'all later. Thank you.